All right. I'm here from Seniors Rights Victoria, and it's a service dedicated to stopping elder abuse. We operate under the principle of empowering older people, and to this end we provide support, information and advice to help prevent and respond to elder abuse and to safeguard older people's rights, dignity and independence. Our services include a helpline, specialist legal services, short-term support and advocacy for individuals, and community and professional education. So elder abuse is a form of family violence. Probably about 5 years ago it wouldn't have been spoken about as such. They were seen as quite separate things. But elder abuse is any form of violence or mistreatment that causes harm to an older person, and it occurs within a relationship of trust. So when I say that, I mean it's not necessarily things like scams or fraud that happens, or if an older person was mugged on the street or something like that, because that's a criminal offence. And elder abuse is not always a criminal offence. Elder abuse can include acts of psychological, financial, social and sexual abuse, as well as neglect. And it most often occurs within the family or domestic setting. And it's really important to say that. At the moment, you might be aware there's a Royal Commission into mistreatment in aged care that's going on, and that's looking a lot about some of the kind of abusive behaviours and mistreatment and lack of dignity and respect that occurs in aged care. But when we speak about elder abuse more generally, it also includes abuse that happens within the family, and it largely includes abuse that happens within the family. 90% of the calls by older people to Seniors Rights Victoria, to the helpline, are about violence perpetrated by a family member. So I wanted to look more closely at some of the unique characteristics of elder abuse, because while it is a form of family violence and it shares many aspects of violence against women and other forms of family violence, there are some unique characteristics. It's commonly intergenerational and perpetrated by an adult son or daughter against their parent or parent-in-law. And so when it comes to older people calling Seniors Rights Victoria, 67% of the abuse we hear about is intergenerational. 40% of the perpetrators at SRV are sons, and 27% are daughters across the different types of abuse. And I'll speak a little bit more about that in a moment. 11% of the abuse that we receive calls about is intimate partner violence. And that might be intimate partner violence that has been occurring over a person's life throughout longer relationships, or they might be newer relationships that have been entered into. So the common factor of the abuse of people that contact our helpline is the age of the person, with the majority of callers being aged 70 to 84 years. So we're looking at different generations of older people as well. We do have callers as young as 60 and up to much older into their late 80s. And I do just want to highlight that these statistics are from our helpline, and so they're only indicative. They're not suggesting prevalence across society, because there's certain reasons why people may or may not call a helpline and why they might see ours as the particular one to help them or not. So the lower percentage of people calling experiencing intimate partner violence might be because they're calling women's helplines or other helplines, family violence helplines, or it might be generational and issues around whether people are recognising and seeking help for that kind of abuse. So I just want to highlight it is only indicative. What I want to talk about today is ageism, and that's what we kind of acknowledge as one of the main drivers of elder abuse. There are many negative attitudes associated with ageing. Getting older can be seen as a time of decline, loss and vulnerability. This word cloud has been taken from an Australian Human Rights Commission report on ageism, which asks people for words describing how Australian media portrays older people. You can see they're all quite negative. Ageism results in people being marginalised and afforded less power and social status. This means that older people are less likely to be listened to. Their decisions might be unfairly questioned. It might be seen that older people cannot make decisions for themselves, or they're likely to have diminished cognition and can be taken advantage of. Ageism can also affect expectations of what a person needs or is entitled to. For example, a family may consider that their parent or grandparent no longer needs all of their money or their house and they should be passing it on. So ageism is a recognised driver of elder abuse. Older people are often abused in a family situation because of their age, because of perceptions of their vulnerability, their care needs or age-related illness, and their role in the family, often as a parent and particularly as a mother. So I briefly just wanted to talk to this diagram, which is taken from one of the Victorian Government's documents about family violence. It highlights some of the different intersections and characteristics that make up an individual's experience. And I think it's important just to note that when I'm making generalisations about older people, that the same considerations regarding intersectionality and individuality should be applied. Because older people are no less diverse in their experience or views than any other parts of the population, and they may be experiencing multiple discriminations. In particular, older women with disabilities, older LGBTI or trans women, and older Aboriginal women are subjected to high levels of family violence and societal structures that discriminate against them. So talking about older women in particular, women tend to live longer than men, so that can change their experience of ageing. It can change their circumstance, their economic situation, and the longer relationships that they may be having. Older women, their family and society in general, can hold generational perceptions and expectations about family violence and about family roles, and this can be a barrier to recognising and reporting abuse. For many women, gendered caregiving expectations have affected their income and superannuation and their role in the family, so that can make it very difficult when they get to later life. Older women have a higher risk than men of experiencing homelessness for the first time in later life because of these reasons. And older women may have age-related illness or disability, or they may be wrongly assumed to have a disability because of their age, and that all plays into perceptions of vulnerability. So looking at violence against older women, over 70% of the calls made by older people to Seniors Rights Victoria are from older women. We do have about 30% or a third of our clients are men, and I think that that's important to note. Both men and women perpetrate elder abuse. What we see at the helpline, around 60% of the perpetrators are men and 40% are women. Though that was taken from about 4 or 5 years ago, and more recent analysis is suggesting it's a little bit more 50-50, and that's across different types of abuse. So it's not just financial abuse, it's often physical, it's often psychological, it's often social. And so therefore the role of gender as a driver in intergenerational abuse needs further research, because women are responsible for 40% suggests that gender, a factor may be playing out in a different way. And one of these different ways is the significance of the parent-child relationship. And I think that looks to the responsibilities that a mother often feels towards her children, and that those responsibilities can be taken advantage of. So 2 of the really common scenarios we see are an adult child who moves back home or never leaves, or an older woman who moves in with a family member as she's getting older for her care needs to be taken care of, or the promise that they will be. And in both of these situations, I think the role of the mother as the carer, it can often be taken advantage of, because we particularly see adult children who might be unemployed, who might have left the family home because of family violence, move back in with their parents, and then perpetrate elder abuse against their parents. And so I guess the takeaway messages today are that when we're looking at older women, that intimate partner violence is a really important aspect, and the primary prevention in terms of older women would be similar to prevention for women of any age, along with an increased recognition that older women experience intimate partner violence, including sexual abuse, and that this violence can be within new or lifelong relationships. But also that an often overlooked aspect is intergenerational family violence. And I think we need an increased awareness of this. We need to frame it as family violence. We need to be aware of ageism and our own inherent ageism towards ourselves and towards others. And we need to be aware of society's expectations on parents, particularly mothers, when it comes to taking responsibility. Because one of the important things we see is that people often don't want to relinquish their relationship with their child who has abused them. They often want to try and keep that relationship, especially if there are grandchildren involved, and also because they often feel a great sense of responsibility in a way that they brought this person into the world, they brought them up, they feel that they perhaps have impacted how this person is behaving. And so I think that's a really important aspect that needs to be considered. So, in summary, older women are subjected to intimate partner violence and violence perpetrated by adult children and other family members, and gender and ageism are both drivers of violence against older women. Thanks.